Welcome, everyone. My name is Cedrick Boursiquot. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Diversity and Inclusion Specialist out of the Division of Talent and Inclusion. I know it's a mouthful. Talent and Inclusion was formerly HR, Human Resources. Welcome to the second Great Minds, Brave Spaces event. Snow keeps on trying to bring us down, but we're not going to let it wane. Okay, thank you for all showing your beautiful faces, braving the weather out there. I know it was a lot. I forgot my umbrella, so I was just walking huddled in my coat all the way over here. It was a mess. But we're so happy to see you here. Please feel free again to get up and go to get food as you need, and there's one right there, and go to the bathroom. But make sure that if you need to leave early, that's absolutely fine. Just be respectful and try to do so as quietly as possible. The Division of Talent and Inclusion strives to create institutionalized spaces like this, where individuals from all over campus can come together and share ideas, passions, questions, and food. Great Minds, Brave Spaces is aimed and dedicated to working on this at least twice a term. So we're going to have an event at least twice a term, and it's going to be from everything from a presentation to a workshop to a simple conversation about something that the community wants to talk about. So this series is really for you. We usually have a debrief after this, but since the snow is trying to cancel everything and anything, we won't have a debrief after this one. But if you do have any feedback you want to give me, you can email that directly to me. That's cmboursiquot@wpi.edu. If you, I will be sending out an email to remind everyone, so make sure that you get your email to Bonnie back there. If you could raise your hand. Make sure your email is with her so that I can reach out to you for the next Great Minds, Brave Spaces. We'll get started in just a moment. Before we dive in, there are a couple of things you should know. One, this event is being recorded for those who are not able to be in attendance today, so keep that in mind. Look out for updates for the next Great Minds, Brave Spaces. Again, emails down to Bonnie. And lastly, this presentation is meant to be about an hour. So if you need to leave, please feel free to do so. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our presenter for today, Cedrick J. Boursiquot. Cedrick's pronouns are he, him, his, and he is one of the most passionate storytellers that I know. Cedrick takes his life experiences and breathes life into the theories and numbers that we often get stuck in higher education. Cedrick J. Boursiquot is the SEVIS Systems Coordinator and Data Analyst at MIT's International Students Office. Prior to his position at MIT, he worked as an Associate IT Director and IT Integration Specialist at Catholic Memorial High School, which was preceded only by his tenure at St. John's High School. I know there's some St. John's people in the house. Hi. And before, where he was also a computer science teacher and an audiovisual director. Cedrick is truly passionate about all things technology. It started from a young age where he began taking apart and rebuilding his remote controller cars, as well as anything he could get his hands on, sometimes to his detriment. His passion followed him to high school, where he took Java courses, and eventually to college at Tufts University, where he majored in child development with a focus in technology in the classroom. Cedrick has taken his passion and love for technology and incorporated it into his professional and personal life. He's a proud geek, and probably the proudest geek that I know. I think one of the best accomplishments that he's gone through a lot, and he's done a lot at universities, at churches, and different places, but I think the best accomplishment that he has is being a wonderful brother. Without further ado, I introduce Cedrick Boursiquot.
I want to thank Crystal, my sister, for that very heartfelt introduction. And I am the one that's blessed to have her as my sister, so start off with that. So as Crystal said, I started my career in technology, if you will, at a very, very young age. This happened in Utah. So I used to live in Utah for a while, and during that period of time, my mother, for me, one of the things I liked a lot and still do is cars. I'm very, very passionate about cars, to the point where I can tell you the model numbers to certain cars, where we might see a BMW 326, I see a BMW E46, because that's the chassis number. And that's just how in depth I go with cars. So my love for cars is really what started it. My mom used to get me remote control cars. Now, We didn't come from a family with a lot of means, so when she got me a remote control car, she really strived to get it. I, on the other hand, would take that, and instead of being, I was appreciative. I'm not saying I wasn't, but I would take those cars and tear them apart. And as you can imagine, my mom didn't take too kindly to that, where she would take time to get me these cars, and she'd walk into the room and there's pieces everywhere. I remember one particular instance, she got me a big monster truck remote control car for, I believe it was like my 7th birthday. And we had a whole bunch of sandboxes outside, so I'm like, this is big truck, big wheels. So first thing I do is take it outside, and I'm driving it all around the sandbox. About an hour into my play, it just cuts out. So being a little kid, I'm like, all right, well, battery's dead. So I grab it, bring it back upstairs, charge the battery, wait the 3 or 4 hours it took to charge the battery, pop it back in, and still not moving. So the next thing I do is start taking it apart. My mom wasn't home at that point, so that's what got me lucky. So I started taking it apart and trying to figure out what is wrong with this vehicle, right? I didn't know what a gear was. I'm gonna tell you it was a gear issue, but I didn't know it back then. It was just a little circle thing with a little T sticking out that wasn't moving. What I ended up finding out is that there was sand stuck in the gearbox, so it wasn't pushing out power to the axles. That's why it wasn't working. Got the sand out, fixed it, and my remote control car was fixed. That is one of my successful stories. I have many other stories that were unsuccessful, and I have a graveyard of remote control cars to prove it. So that's where my tinkering really started. A couple years later, I moved to Massachusetts, where I had the privilege of going to St. John's High School. And it started sophomore year, and actually my Java teacher is here, Mr. Blondin, right here in the front row. I started Java sophomore year at St. John's High School. And that really piqued my interest because not only did I like to take things apart with my hands, but I wanted to see the backbone, the inner workings of these, right? So talking about computers and whatever it is, anything from an ATM to when you get to a garage, right? And it says full. How does the computer realize it's full? So those are some of the codes that we did with Mr. Blondin. Real basic, but starting back my sophomore year in high school. From high school, I moved on to go to Tufts University, where, as my sister said, I majored in child development. Now, some of you are wondering, how is child development linked to technology? Going back to that tinkering mindset. I love to tinker, and I remember asking my advisor, hey, I like to tinker. To the point where, while I was in college, my uncle owned his own auto mechanic store, right? And I would often be in there tinkering. That was really to my detriment because that cost a lot of money, because sometimes he'd have a client's car come in and I'm like, I know what the issue is, start taking it apart, and a couple hours later he'd be like, I'm sorry, I have no idea what's going on here. And so my uncle would have to come and help me. Many late nights spent at that shop. But I told my advisor, I'm like, I don't know, college isn't for me. How am I supposed to move on? I love taking things apart. So what she decided, she spoke to one of my professors, Professor Marina Bears, and said, hey, I think Cedrick would be great for your program. So I got introduced to child development, but we did something called Scratch Junior, and We Do. Now that's basically computer programming for kids from kindergarten all the way up to about 6th grade. Professor Marina Bears was actually the person that created Scratch in correspondence with MIT. And so I started taking her classes and going to inner city schools and teaching kids from kindergarten all the way to 6th grade about basic programming, where you'd have some blocks. I would say start and stop, and then in between is your program, right? So it's taking that Java, C++, all those computer languages that we know and breaking it down to a simplified version for students. So that's how I got to, dabble in technology in college. Upon graduation, I returned to St. John's High School, where I was a computer science teacher. I taught basics computer science as well as web page. And then from there, I moved on to Catholic Memorial in Boston. Working in Catholic Memorial in Boston, I took a step back from teaching in the classroom, and instead what I did is I was teaching teachers. What I was doing there is, because I had such a love for technology, I would sit down with teachers, go over their curriculums, and find out a better way to introduce it or incorporate it into the classroom. One thing that I found at Catholic Memorial, and it's not just Catholic Memorial, many institutions, you have some teachers that are like, hey, new technology, I'm gonna embrace it, right? Then you have other teachers like, I'm using a pen and pencil or the chalkboard, and this is the technology I've been using since 1950, and it's not changing. And then you have the people in between who are tentative. So I had to deal with a wide spectrum of, first of all, specialties or I guess, comfort, if you will. After CM, I went to MIT, and now I'm working with data. So I report to the government, the students at MIT, so I do a lot of numbers with stats regarding how many students we have at MIT, how, the population of our undergraduates that are male to female, right? The population of our undergraduate students that come from overseas, how many are on financial aid. All those stats numbers is what I end up taking care of. All right, so that's just a quick little brief overview of how technology is in my life and how I use it. Now, the first thing I want to do before I continue, I want to let everyone in here know, because we are at an institution, WPI, right, that this is not an academic presentation in the sense that I won't be giving quantitative data. I'm not here for high theory and conjecture, right? Most of my stuff is qualitative. It's my experiences, but qualitative data does give life to quantitative data. So we're not going to discredit it, but I just want to start off by letting you know that before we continue, okay? The second disclaimer I want to give you real quick, I will be covering geek culture, all right? Or geek culture as abroad. Now, there's a lot of different sects of geek culture, and if we go to Africa, China, even just regionally, it changes. So unfortunately, in this hour, I will not have enough time to cover all the different little niches of geek culture, if you will. I'm just going to try my best to give you a very broad view. What I'm going to say as well is that I consider myself a geek, and I think that's very powerful because as we go on, you'll see what I'm talking about. I consider myself a geek. It doesn't mean everyone else considers me a geek, right? More times than not, for me, especially with my stature, I've always been seen as a football player, which is true. I did play football, right? But that's not the first thing when someone sees me like, he's a geek. No. The first thing I typically get is he's a football player, right? And funny enough, the one time in my life that I was misconstrued as a geek was on the football field. So I remember it was freshman year, just came back from Canada. I was a little late. I didn't even know I was going to St. John's until halfway through the summer. And I'm rushing down the football field, and this is where we're about to start two-a-days. I'm a little scrawny kid, big glasses. I'm rushing down the field because I don't know where this is. St. John's decides to hide their football field in the woods, so I didn't know where it was. Get down to the field, right, and I see everyone in pads. I don't have pads yet because this is my first day of practice. I've missed 3 days of practice. Get on the field. I'm looking up at the sun because I don't know what I'm doing, just wondering. And I remember that guy, the guy next to me, his name is Anthony Amarillo. We ended up being on the line together. He said that day he looked at me, he's like, man, this is a real geek. He said, I did not think you could hit. I did not think you could do anything. Showed him different later on. But the point is, the one place in my life that I was misconstrued, where I wanted to be a football player, they thought I was a geek. All right, so those were two quick disclaimers. So before we continue, right, I want everyone to kind of I want us all to be on the same boat. I want all of us to be able to experience this together. So what I want to do is do a quick activity, just so you don't just take my word for it. We can see what the world has to say for it. So what I'm going to do is each table, I'm going to go by groups of 2. I'm going to assign each of these tables a search engine, okay? Now I want to let you know, if you're like me, sometimes I have a little bit of social anxiety. So if you want to do this by yourself, you don't want to be in a group, please take some time to do that for yourself, and you can stand aside. Otherwise, I'll ask that as the groups of 2s, they kind of get together, I'll give you each a search engine, and I want all of us to search the word geek, okay? Now, before we get to that, we're also going to need another device that I think we're all very, very familiar with. We're going to need our phones, right, to do that search. Now, you'll see in front of you, you each have index cards and a Sharpie or a writing utensil. What I'm going to ask is that maybe we assign one scribe or one person to write down. Let's just go with the top 10 characteristics, right, or descriptors that we find in the images that we search. Does that make sense to everyone? Is there any questions in regards to that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign everyone different search engines, and we'll go ahead and get started, okay? So these first 2 tables, I'm going to assign you guys Google, so you can guys go to google.com. These 2 tables, and search the word geek, the image, and top 10 descriptors. Next, I'm going to do Bing. It stands for because it's not Google, or at least I think it is, right? So bing.com, you guys will be looking at images, once again, of geek, okay? right here, these last two tables, I'm gonna do about.com, and you guys will also do geek. Here we're gonna do DuckDuckGo, okay? DuckDuckGo.com. So DuckDuckGo, all one word. So 2 ducks and a go.com will be your search engine. Please look at the images. Here we're gonna have MSN.com. All right, so MSN will be these tables. And I need one more search engine. I can't. Huh? And then dogpile.com. Dogpile, yes, that's what it is. Yes, dogpile.com.
Looking at the images and descriptors of the images?
No, so you're going, okay, perfect. So if I can have your attention real quick, I just had a really good question. So you're looking at the images and you're going to be writing down the descriptors, not the descriptors of the images. So look at the images and kind of describe them. So give me 10 descriptors of the images that you see in the first page or so. Okay, so that's what we're going to be going ahead and doing. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to do that. I'm going to grab a drink of water while you search it, and we'll be back to talk about the results. All right, so I'm going to give about 10 more seconds. If you guys can come up with the last. Now, so up here, I love this group up here because they've given me the great questions, all right? So real quick, you don't have to have all 10 descriptors. I just gave 10 so that we could really try to get as many descriptors as possible. If you have 4, 5, 6, that's still fine. Just look at all those images and see what they mean. Give me some descriptions. Now, also, I believe some people may have seen the actual word geek, right? Let's just overlook that. Look at the pictures that they present. So the actual physical pictures and not the words, all right? So if I may, before we get started, before I even move on to my next slide, can I have a couple people volunteer with a couple descriptors of what they saw when they typed in geek into the images of their particular search engine?
First one was big glasses.
Big glasses. So we got big glasses as one of them. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
A lot of white people.
A lot of white people. Okay, thank you. So we have white people and glasses.
Technology, something.
Technology, perfect. White people, glasses, technology.
Well, so yeah, everyone on ours was a man, and it was all very unflattering, like unattractive, unflattering pictures.
Okay, so now we got white males, unattractive, glasses, technology.
And ties too, I think.
Ties, bow ties. Yep, okay, so we have like formal dress wear, right? Anything else?
Pocket
Yes.
protector.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A few of them like dressed in like fan wear of certain sorts of things,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
certain comic books and movies and things.
Perfect. Yep, you have some fandoms, right?
Yeah.
So we got there, right there, fandoms, and Miss, I saw you.
Pocket protector.
Pocket protectors. Absolutely, yes.
Not a nerd.
Not a nerd.
Yeah, there's all these this is what a geek is, and this is what a nerd is.
Perfect. I love that. Not a nerd. Okay, so we have a lot of descriptors, right? So let's move forward. I'm pretty sure you found a lot of images that look like these, right? Well, I know because I searched all the search engines before, so I knew what you're gonna find, right? And so we're looking at them, as we said, what did we say? We said white males, right? Not only did we say white males, we said big glasses. Someone said unattractive, what was the word? I'm sorry. Unflattering. Unflattering. Okay, there we go. We have that. We had technology also in the mix. We also had pocket protectors, right? And formal wear. This is what we see as a geek, right? Also, I loved it. Not a nerd. We'll get into that really quickly. I don't have, that's a whole debate, but we'll talk about that really quickly, all right? So we see all these images. So 2 quick things. When we search something in a search engine, the first page of results is usually the what? The what?
Most accurate.
Most accurate. What else? What else can we say about the first page of results?
The only thing we use.
It's the only thing we use. Oh, I love that. Perfect. Yep. There we go. No. I love it. Love it. Anything else? It's the what? Most traffic. Love it. So we have most traffic, only thing we used, most accurate, most paid for. Look at this. So we already know that the first page of a search result is typically what the answer is going to be. So we can come to a conclusion that geeks are white males who are unflattering and love technology, right? So that leaves no space for anyone else. All right, so that's why I said at the beginning, I started off with, I consider myself a geek because none of these search engines consider me a geek. I consider myself a geek because maybe society doesn't see me as a geek. And you might be like, oh, that's a stretch, Cedrick. Society doesn't see you as a geek. Well, what's the term that we have now? I don't believe you. Google it. Well, Google just told me right now that I'm not a geek. And we really put a lot of emphasis on what we search. So just think about how that plays out in the roles and minds of students who are using this and don't have, like, are not thinking about all the implications, but they constantly see this and say, oh, okay, this is what a geek is. I'll give you another one. When in psychology, they took children, 4 years old, in kindergarten, or just about to get to kindergarten, and they took black children. They took two dolls, a white doll and a black doll. They asked the students which doll was more attractive. The black students would always point to the white doll, just to show you how these implications start very, very young. 4-year-old children. No one's told them anything about it yet. But in that psychological experiment, the psychologist saw that those students already saw that lighter skin was fairer. That was the better place to be, just as we start, okay? So, who's not a nerd, right? That was you? Perfect. I love it. So there may be a nerd in the group somewhere here that is frustrated because I've been using geek and nerd interchangeably. You might be like, no, I do not fall into the geek realm. Let's break them down really quickly. I'm going to use them interchangeably. And there are some differences, but what we also have to understand between geek and nerd culture is that they share the same basis or the same foundation. It's a pursuit of knowledge. It's intellect. That is at the basis. So they both stem from the same foundation, just take different paths, right? And now I'm not saying that every single nerd falls into this category and every single geek falls into this category. Sometimes it goes back and forth. But just for the sake of it, I just want to quickly go through. So your geeks typically will have a niche interest, okay? If we're thinking Game of Thrones, if you're thinking Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's a niched interest, okay? Sir, you had said something about fandoms, right? In talking about like the clothing. You'd have fandoms, pop culture. That would be a geek. Your nerd will be a little bit more diversified. Nerd typically, not always, typically will be in academia, right? They have a diverse interest in all subjects relating to, mathematics, sciences, all that stuff. It would be more academic pursuits. Your geek will be a little bit more creative. Once again, going to pop culture. We have this geek is chic now, right? You have hipsters, all the people dressing like that. Once again, that would be your geek, a little bit more creative. Then you have your nerd, a little bit more conservative. What I mean by conservative here is that they're sticking more to academia, right? And it'll be a little bit more formal. I know we talked about bow ties and we said it was unflattering. Nerds might be a little bit more better dressed, if you will, okay? Please don't take this as an end all be all. This is just going over it, okay? Next thing, you have a geek will typically be a little bit more social. They'll have a community, people that they hang around with and have the same interests. A nerd will be a little bit more introverted. One article that I read, once again, this is not concrete science, says a nerd will only marry a nerd because they can only talk to someone that has the same level of intellect as them, right? A geek, on the other hand, doesn't matter. They can marry anyone because they typically are more social. Once again, not concrete. You have microcosmic and macroscopic, right? With the microcosmic, the geek will notice little things. So once again, I said a geek is a community-oriented. What do I mean by that? Is so if we're in a community together and you're in my geek community, I may notice that, hey, one day Mr. Blonde is not feeling so well. What's going on? What caused you to feel so down? I'll notice these subtle changes. As a nerd is not focused on those small little subtleties of life, if you will. A nerd is more focused on the larger, bigger picture. What am I talking about that? Or what do I mean? I'm talking more about I'm speaking more about world problems. So let's talk about global warming, right? How do you end poverty? All these different things, they're looking at a bigger picture and typically related to science and maths. So that's a just quick breakdown of the geek versus the nerd. Okay? So now I want to talk about what we just talked about. So we just said that a geek is white, male, unflattering, although here we'll see that TV makes them look pretty good. Batman's pretty buff, according to my books, right? So, you know, let's talk about him. So you have Batman, multi-billionaire, orphaned. He knows how to fight. He's extremely intelligent, right? And that's who you get, but once again, he's white. Then you have Tony Stark. He's a little bit of a loose cannon, but he's still really intelligent and a lot of wealth, right? Let's talk about Sherlock Holmes. Really good at observing, forensic science, and really good with logic. Once again, you have these people, right? We're looking at television, portraying them. Once again, these are all white males. Now, my question becomes, let's try to think of a woman. Let's try to think of a person of color who has held a major role and their intellect has been a big part of their role. Can anyone name something for me?
Shuri from Black Panther.
I love that you use that example. Shuri from Black Panther. But I posit that she's just a supporting character because T'Challa is the main character, right? So we do see a black woman with great, I love that example. She's phenomenal, intelligent, but she's not the main show. She's not the main point of the focus. Anyone else? I thought about Steve Urkel for a little bit with Family Matters, right? We know he's a little bit weird. Did I do that? And all that type of stuff. But with Steve Urkel, he was intelligent, but that wasn't the main focus of his character. Fun fact about that, Steve Urkel was actually supposed to be a one-time show. Steve Urkel was not supposed to be a main character. He came on Family Matters for one episode, and people loved him so much that they kept him. But they didn't keep him because he was smart. They kept him because of his quirkiness, right? So once again, you have someone that could be intelligent. That's not what they're focused on. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Carlton. He's smart, absolutely smart. But guess what? They make fun of him the whole time. They belittle him because of his smarts, right? So once again, he's not the main focus. So whenever we do see someone, a woman or person of color breaking that mold, they're not the main attraction. They're just on the side. So if we continue moving forward, we have Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, right? You have Dexter, his nemesis, Mandark, right? And then here we have the Big Bang Theory. And I like to bring this up because you kind of do see it breaking the mold with Raj. Raj here has a PhD in astrophysics. That's really smart if you ask me. But once again, he's a side character. He's not the main show, right? And I can list a couple other characters. Think about Penelope Garcia from Criminal Minds. She is, huh?
Abby from NCIS.
There you go, Abby from NCIS, Penelope from Criminal Minds. I know Penelope a little bit better, right? She's a bigger woman, but she's always confined to, so like they break the mold, but then they try to fit some stereotypes. Because I know if you watch certain movies, when you see the geek or the nerd, they're unflattering, they're big, and they stay in a room. So Penelope kind of fits some of that mold because she's always in the room. She's a little bit bigger, but she's not the main attraction either. But everything needs to go through her to get done, right? Let's think about Daphne from Scooby-Doo. Another woman, right? This is just a character. This is just a cartoon, but she's a side character. Once again, we see that the real geeks, or what we see as a geek, is a white male. No one else is able to come and break that dominant narrative. So the question becomes, what is the impact? How does that impact us as a society, right? So I have some numbers up here, and we'll go through it, because all these numbers tell a story. The first number here, oh, actually, before I continue, I want to let you know that these numbers are not all-inclusive, right? These numbers are focusing on race and men and women. Unfortunately, I was unable to get numbers on trans folk, and I was unable to get numbers on sexuality. All right, that's a whole other factor as well, but I was unable to get those numbers. I got these numbers from the National Science Foundation, and they listed all this. The stats come from 2013 to about 2015, okay? So the first number, so in 2014, they said that by 2018, our current year right now, we would have 8,650,000 jobs in STEM-related fields. I don't know how close we are to that because I couldn't find that number just yet, but that was a prediction, right? Of those 8,650,000, 84% of those jobs would be held by white males and Asian males. 84%. 84%. -12. I was born in 1991. This stat starts in 1991. All right? Since 1991, there's been a -12% decrease or decline in the amount of degrees handed out to women related to computer science. -12%. Okay? 15,900. A man and a woman, same exact job, STEM-related field, that's the difference in their pay. No difference. You're going in for the same exact job, a woman will come in $15,900 less than their male counterparts. As a black male, they tell me that right now in my career I should be making about $75,000 annually. My Latina or Latino counterpart will be making, same experience, $77,000 annually. $2,000 because of a different shade of complexion. Then you move on to my white male counterparts, they're making $88,000 to my $75,000. Once again, these stats come from the National Science Foundation, okay? So that's just part of the impact that we have here. So let's also talk about how that impacts our campus here at WPI, how that impacts MIT's campus as well, and how that impacts the jobs. We just talked about jobs a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more. So in 2013, in the computers, sciences, and engineering, right? Enrollment, 81% of those enrolled in computer science or engineering, 81% were male, 19% female. This is 2013, okay? Graduate enrollment, that jumps up, right? Graduate enrollment, you have 58% male, so this once again, this is strictly, I'm not talking about every single degree, this is strictly STEM-related fields, right? So you're gonna have 58% male and 42% female in the graduate level. So we would think that, hey, graduate level, let's translate that into the job market, right? No. When you get into occupations that are STEM-related, 72% of those coming from graduate school will be males and 28% female. Now here's another reason this number drops off significantly. Females are more likely, I couldn't get the number on this, right? But I remember reading it from the National Science Foundation. They didn't give me a specific number. But females are more likely to drop off from their STEM-related career in the first year than their male counterparts. And then they go on to pursue something in the medical fields. This is once again the National Science Foundation. Okay? So we're looking at this impact. So let's make a connection. All right, I've been talking about impact, and I've been talking about numbers, and this doesn't make sense. Maybe it does, but maybe it doesn't. Let's make a connection, all right? I'm gonna give you guys a quick riddle. Some of you guys may have heard this, so I'll ask, please not to put your hands up. We wanna talk about this and what it implies, okay? So the riddle goes like this. A father and his son are in a car accident. The father dies at the scene and the son is rushed to the hospital. At the hospital, the surgeon looks at the boy and says, I can't operate on that boy. He's my son. How can this be? Anyone have an answer for me? So who's the surgeon? Mother, right? But when you ask people, right? So I remember when I got this question, I'm like, it can't be the grandfather, it can't be the grandson. Like, I'm just like, it doesn't make sense. Do you know what that is? That's implicit bias. Because I'm thinking a doctor should be a man. And guess what? Maybe someone might have said, oh, he has two fathers. It was his father. There's nothing wrong with that. But once again, why was it a father that we went to? Because it's implicit bias. We see our doctors as typically male, right? It took me forever to find out, oh, it's his mother. I'm going down the tree. I'm just like, I can't understand. Well, this doesn't make sense. But it's implicit bias, right? Because we are thinking that the doctor is a male or a man. And that's the issue. So this is what I'm talking about, going back to this. This is how it affects us. When now you're thinking of a geek, when you automatically think a geek is a white person, all right? We have to put a precursor before it. If the geek is a female or a woman, you're gonna say a woman geek. Why? Because if I said geek, you wouldn't think she'd be part of the club, right? You have to say black geek. Why? Because if I didn't put black before it, you wouldn't think they'd be part of the club. right? Why do we say male nurse? We typically associate nurse with females, or women, excuse me, right? So once again, when you have a precursor that goes before it, that means that that precursor is an outlier. So let's take some time to look at the mirror, all right? Many of us think, so going back to this implicit bias, some of us like, oh, there's no way. You know, I'm a good person, and I'm always trying my best to help people. Good people make mistakes too. That's what we have to understand. And good people need to look in the mirror and see how they can make things better. Because at the end of the day, some people think we're in a post-equity era. They think that everyone is now on a level playing field. That's not true. I just showed you stats to the contrary, right? And 2013 was not that long ago. And even if the numbers have gone up, which I believe they have, but I just couldn't find them to give them to you guys, it's still not enough. Because what scares me is this. We get to a point where we've moved forward and like, oh, we become complacent with it. That's where the danger lies. Yes, you're aware of the problem, but we have to move forward and continue moving forward. Because once you become complacent, you end up back in the same place you were before, if not worse. Because now you have the knowledge but are not using it. And is that not the goal of higher ed? To equip our students, equip ourselves with the knowledge, and utilize it for better. How many of you would like to have gone to college, paid that 50 G's a year, and sit on it? That's a waste of money. So then how can we do the same thing when we get knowledge about different marginalized groups? We take that information, oh yeah, I understand. No, there's not a lot of them, insert marginalized group here in the college. Oh yeah, they're being hurt, insert marginalized group, whatever. You got the information, why are you just sitting on it? We need to act. Okay? So some of us think we're in a post-equity era. We are not. We need to continue moving forward, and we cannot be complacent. Also, we need to make sure that those marginalized groups have a sense of belonging. Most of the time, they're marginalized because they're off to the side. People don't care about them, right? We trample them, overlook them. They're not part of the main culture, society. We need to make sure that they have a sense of belonging because they are part of the group. I think there's someone I spoke to that was beautifully put, right? So at St. John's, I remember this, I was the only black person to walk across stage when I graduated in 2009. Only black person, right? There was a couple brown people there too, but I'm just saying I was the only black person to walk across stage. And I remember that particularly because when I got to St. John's, there was 3 of us that started together, okay? Now, that was in 2009, not too long ago, all right? But what I'm saying here is that you need to have some type of representation, right? So, yes, there's leaps and strides, people were moving forward, but there's still gaps that we need to fill. So, not only do we need a sense of belonging, we need a representation. And representation comes in the form of faculty and staff, as well as resources. Because if we equip our faculty and staff to take care of it but don't give them the resources, the well's going to run dry. This is Joe Handelsman, a quote I particularly love. People say, oh, we shouldn't have quotas, but diversity is a form of excellence, and there are plenty of outstanding women out there. You don't have to lower your standards in the slightest, you just have to pay attention, right? We can't be complacent. We see it, we need to call it for what it is and find a way to find a solution. Now, when we have all this information, we've looked in the mirror and we've identified the problem, we need to move forward with a solution. But we often have excuses, right? The university, school, institution has come really far. Oh, you know I was speaking to Bonnie from WPI, right? And she was telling me that I believe this year's freshman class is the highest number of female or women graduates come in. Congratulations on that. That's a wonderful step, but I think we can do more. And that's not to say that's not enough, but we can absolutely do more. But I guarantee you with that achievement, there was people grumbling. Why do we have to have so many women? Are we gonna lower our standards? So on and so forth. It's true. You're always gonna meet resistance. And the question becomes, why is it so bad for everyone to have equity? Right? Why does only one person or one group need to have equity? Why can't everyone? Why is it so bad for an even playing field? So you have that excuse. Another excuse, I was raised to treat everyone the same. I'm a good person. I already talked about that. You could be a good person. Good people make mistakes. All right? If you're a good person and you're complacent, you mean nothing to me. Because you're not looking to advance anything. You're happy with what you have. You need to find a way to help others move forward. And if you want to be selfish, in that same realm, you are helping yourself as well. So you have that. Another excuse. I work with someone who is black, queer, insert whatever historically marginalized group you want there. First of all, let's not make them trophies, okay? Sit here and be like, I have 6 gay friends, 4 black friends, and 6 trans friends. Are they trophies? Are you collecting them? Let's not objectify people, right? They are part of a marginalized group and they have their own struggles. We're not gonna sit here and objectify them, right? And even so, I'll say this, I'm black, definitely in part of the marginalized group, and I have some queer friends, right? But have I never said anything to them that might have hurt them? Have I, even with my sister, my own sister, right, who's a woman, have I not said things to her that have hurt her? But I love her, right? That's not an excuse. It's impact versus intent. I may not have intended to hurt her, but the impact was very real. So let's not sit here with these trophies. Yes, I'm a black man, but guess what? I can probably make a mistake with a black woman. I may make a mistake with a queer person. Let them explain to you what you did wrong, learn from it, and move forward. That's not my job, issue, or problem. Yeah, it may not be your job. Fine. Not your issue or problem. At that point, I mean, what is humanity? I mean, we always teach, right? Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. We always teach our kid that. The golden rule. Is that not against it? So if I had an issue that wasn't your issue, I would want you to walk on by and act like I had no issue. We don't teach our children that, but we're saying differently. Do as I say, not as I do, is what we're essentially doing, right? It's not my job description. Let me tell you something. Breathing's not in your job description either, but you do it, right? Now some of you might be like, ooh, that's a little harsh. That's fine. That's the whole point. You're supposed to ruffle feathers. Here's why I say it. Now, I'm going to start this with a precursor. It's difficult to find numbers on trans folk, right? I looked everywhere. It's difficult. Here's the thing. Trans folk are being targeted, right? Lots of violence, murder, homicide, lots of things, bad things, right, are happening to trans folk. This is a matter of life and death for them. Your advocacy could save someone's life. So why do I say breathing? Because breathing is essential to life. Well, yeah, maybe it's not in your job description, but you do breathe and it's essential to your life. Well, for someone else, it actually is their life. So yes, it's not in your job description, but help someone else out. You could be saving their life. I don't have privilege. I'm not rich. I worked for what I have. First of all, I want to say everyone has privilege. I'm going to stop right there because some people are going to be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Cedrick said black people have privilege. We don't have to fight this war no more. No, that's not what I'm saying. Everyone has privilege. I, as a black male, have privilege. I have more privilege than my sister as a black woman. Okay? I also have more privilege than the person where if you tell me I want to go to a baseball game, I can climb up the stairs. The person in the wheelchair doesn't. They have to make sure they find a ramp. I have the ability of motion where they are more limited in their ability of motion. That's what I mean by privilege. Sometimes you have to actually sit down and take a look at what privileges you have. And it hurts sometimes, because I didn't like being told that I had privilege. I didn't think I had privilege. When you start looking at yourself, there are privileges that you have, and you can use that privilege to help others. Okay? I'm just doing my job. It's fine. Just do your job. But at the end of the day, when, you know, as we all know, we're all going to die one day. What do you want to leave behind? Right? He was a hard worker, came into work, and that's it. She was a hard worker, came into work, that's it. Never went out and helped others. Never fought for a cause that was not of their own. So those are excuses that we give. I have rebuttals for each of them. So How do we create an all-inclusive campus? First, we need to understand that those students in the marginalized groups that are coming still navigate those stereotypes once they arrive on campus. I remember being at Tufts University, this was probably a particularly scary moment in my life, when the Boston bombings happened. We are not too far from where everything went down. And what was particularly scary is that everyone was on the edge. And I remember at one point in time, this is when they were still looking for everyone, right? At one point in time, we had a student who went to go help his friend down the street with a wrench in his hand, black student. Cops got called on him because they said he had a gun in his hand. Student was terrified. And I remember myself, because at that point in time I worked in security, and I remember being so scared to walk around campus because someone might construe the way I walk or my gestures for something else because everyone was on edge, right? I spoke to my counselor and she understood that I was still navigating some of the stereotypes. Why is a wrench seen as a gun in the hand of a black man? Right? And I don't even gotta go back to 2013. We can go now, most recently, right? Where you have the young man that was shot in his grandmother's backyard. Why are we seen as a threat? That's a stereotype that I constantly have. I remember one particular time, just a really quick one, I went to a gas station. I was pumping gas, and there was a couple in front of me. And me just being the nice guy that I am, I saw that the gas tank was open. I figured, let me not touch their car, because I don't like people touching my car either. I walked up to the window, knocked on the door just to say, hey, look, your gas tank is open. Can I close it for you? The look of utter fear, and this is not just me just saying that. The look of fear they had on their face when they saw me was ridiculous, palpable, to the point where I was taken aback. So can you imagine me walking up to the door, they're scared, and I jump back because I'm like, why are you so scared of me? They were so scared just to go on to their actions they peeled out and drove out into the street, left their tank open. I did nothing to scare them. Why is that? I know how I present, and it's scary to some people. So what we need to understand is that there are going to be some stereotypes that our students are navigating while on campus. We need to serve in an intentional manner, okay? When we're looking to help, you need to do so in an intentional manner. We'll make sure that we're trying to help, asking questions, asking those marginalized students, what can we do better? Because if you don't ask them, you don't know. And you may think you'll be doing a good job, but you may be actually hurting them. We need to do it in an intentional manner. We also need to look at, we really need to take a deep look at ourselves. What do I mean by this? How deeply are we reviewing our process, hiring process? Yes, we're sitting here and saying that, oh, we want more diversity, we want more equity, and we want more inclusion, but are we actually doing that in our process, right? Our hiring process, our admissions process. Looking at all those processes and breaking them down to see, are we being intentional about everything that we do? Change needs to look harder. Going back to what I just said, being intentional about everything we do, you need to take the time and look. And sometimes it hurts. Maybe you have a diversity group that's 4 white men. Someone's got to have a conversation with them and be like, ooh, I don't think this is not a good diversity group here. That's a hard conversation to have, but it needs to be had because we need to have different perspectives in the room. Not everyone is being accounted for. And as good as they may all be, going back to a good person, there are just some things that they have not experienced. So we need to make sure everyone is in on conversation. Criticism will always ruffle feathers. Just keep on ruffling, okay? Now, I want to go really quickly. I'm almost done. About time. We have a change trifecta, and what I mean by that is that you have diversity, equity, and inclusion. It has to be this trifecta. You can't do diversity programs and inclusion programs, right, and forget about equity. Or you can't go and grab, let's get diverse, let's become a more diverse campus and forget about your equity and inclusion parts. This is a trifecta. I spoke about this really briefly before. We start off with awareness. You need to be aware of the problem. You are always, always, always going to counter resistance. People are going to give you stats and different reasons for not allowing this to happen. Once you can get past that, you'll reach a point of compliance, and this is where most institutions plateau, right? We become aware of the problem, we bypass the resistance, or we move forward with the resistance, right? we get to a place of compliance, and that's it. We do nothing with it. What we need to continue doing is, from compliance, not plateau, get up and continue to test. Ask those tough questions. Ask the students. Ask those who are marginalized, how can we do a better job? Have programs that start at grassroots levels and allow these students to bring it forward or take it on themselves, and then ask, what can we do better? That's the testing. Then from the testing, that will eventually bring on individual change, because individuals need to change. Some of those resistors will still be here. And then moving on forward, we hopefully get to a point of cultural change. Now, this is cyclical. What do I mean by that? This has to continually, it's a cycle, got to continually be going. We can't just get to culture change and call that it. Because once again, I'm talking about complacence. When you get to a point of complacence and you're okay with it, we've actually taken a step back. So this has to be an ongoing process that never stops. So, the game plan, I want to leave you guys with this. Everyone, faculty, staff, students, need to be on the same playing field. We all need to be striving for the same goal, right? And what does that mean? Maybe you as a staff member may not know what to do. Ask questions. Ask your department. Ask HR. There are other people with resources that can help you. Ask someone that who may be part of the marginalized group. What can I do to be better? Better yet, do research, right? Because oftentimes we find that when something directly impacts us, that's when we become the guru on it. If all of a sudden, you know, your daughter or your son was gay, boom, you start doing research. How can I help them? What can I do to make them feel better? Why is it when you get to that point that you have to do it? All right? Many men say, I become a feminist when I had my daughter. No, I'd rather be a feminist before I have my daughter. Why can't I start tackling those issues beforehand? Why do I have to wait until it becomes personal? We have to start reaching out to others before it becomes personal. So that's what I leave you with, the game plan. Are there any questions? Questions? Yes.
I really like the last graphic about implementing change.
Yep.
Like, what does testing look like?
Testing looks different across every institution. It all depends on what programs you have there. So you could see if your programs are actually driving up numbers. So me, I'm a data guy, right? You implement a program, are the numbers constantly going up? That could be a good test. Or going back and having a third party come in and look at what you're doing and then telling you, hey, you're doing a good job, or you can do better here, you can improve there. Sometimes it's having another set of eyes is best, you know, because sometimes maybe, you know, when you write a paper, you sit there, you think it's perfect, and someone comes in and they catch all the little mistakes that you were overlooking. It's because it's a fresh set of eyes. Sometimes it's as simple as getting a fresh set of eyes on the problem and just saying, hey, I think you can do this a little better. So testing may not necessarily mean testing in the traditional sense. It's just making sure that we're keeping ourselves in check and always trying to strive for better.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
So I teach in environmental studies, and when I'm doing some of my presentations in class and stuff, I'll try to look for pictures that are more representative, right? So I'll look for like people in nature,
Yep.
And I have the same issue, right? It's like all white people that are in there. And I also remember watching a documentary that was looking at, you know, black people don't surf, that this is a sport, an outdoor thing dominated by white people.
Yeah.
And what I was wondering is if you have any knowledge of any research that links kind of that lack of representation of being able to see non-white people out in nature as any sort of link to engagement in STEM, right? Because you're talking about this happens with like kids, young age,
Yeah.
and of seeing yourself represented as someone who's outside, who's hiking, who's doing activities out in nature, as any links to engaging in STEM fields where you know, might see a link between being outside and being in nature and exploring and learning about outdoors to biology or ecology or any other STEM fields?
I don't have any research on that. That is definitely a good question. That's something that you actually piqued my interest. Would anyone else in the room may have some advice in regards to that? That's not something unfortunately, I don't have an answer to at the moment.
Okay.
But that's something I'll be very intrigued to look into.
Okay. Well, I'll look into it if you do too.
Absolutely.
share.
That sounds good. I'll get your contact information after. I'd love to.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, I want to thank you, everyone, for coming this afternoon. Hope you have a great one. And don't forget, there's still some food right outside. All right?